WTRE. We have Ashley Wilson and Rob Goodfellow in from the Decatur County Sheriff's Department. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Sandy.
How are the two of you?
Good.
All right. Well, we know that that you've seen Mark already this morning, or maybe you didn't see him. I don't know.
didn't see him.
He was backing away. So what's going on this morning with the Sheriff's Department?
We're just here to talk about our traffic safety again and some of our partnerships.
And it is spring, so
It is spring.
there's always of course, we just had the St. Patrick's Day, because normally that's one of those days that they talk about one to be aware of with potential for
Drinking and driving.
drinking and driving.
I think we had a couple that night.
We did.
Is that right?
We did.
Okay. So let's talk about where we're at for the campaign.
Well, we're starting our 2026 grant writing for the CHIRP grant, the Comprehensive Highway Injury Reduction Program through ICGI. So we're about through that. I think we got approval from the council and commissioners to go ahead and apply for that.
We should find out in September if our county was awarded that.
And how much?
Usually we're awarded something every year. Now I will say funding from 2024 to 2025 was substantially cut, but I
Okay.
think that was a statewide
A
funding
statewide
cut.
funding cut. Okay. Now, you talk about this being the 26th. Do we still have some funds that are being utilized then for this year?
Yes,
we do.
ma'am. Yep.
So they go fiscal year. So they go
Okay.
from June to October.
No, October to September, the end of September.
Okay. And so their fiscal year is a little bit different than our budgetary years for the county. But because it's a grant, we're able to do this all year long.
Okay.
In 2024, we had 745 property damage crashes reported to our county. We had 6 fatalities. We had 113 injuries, crashes with injury reported, and out of those 160 people were actually injured. So some of those ended up being multiple injuries in the same vehicle.
And here's the staggering number. I mean, that's average for the state, but then here's the staggering number for our community. We have 94 arrests for operating while intoxicated in Decatur County, and that just counts for Decatur County agencies. That's not counting what the state police also arrested in our county. So, I mean, it could be probably over 100 for 2024.
And that's related to the number of arrests in connection with crashes?
No, that's just
That's just
OWI,
arrest for
OWI.
operating while intoxicated, whether it be alcohol or drug related.
Okay.
You know, and that's a big one that people don't realize. They think because it's operating while intoxicated, it's automatically alcohol, and it's not. We have had some arrests where it's prescription drugs. Even though you were prescribed prescription drugs legally, you know, a lot of those bottles say, do not operate heavy machinery while you're using this medication. So if you're under medication, even if you're taking it legally and as prescribed, it can cause intoxication levels for driving. So you can be arrested if you're driving recklessly and we find out that you're on prescription medication and that's what's causing it.
Especially when you're mixing them. Ambien, which is a sleep drug, add that to a painkiller, and now you've got twice the intoxication or the impairment. So
Are you able to tell that mix by a blood draw? Are you able to tell that mix by on the scene with any kind of checking device?
sometimes we do go through our standard field sobriety test, and you can tell that there's some kind of impairment, or even their driving, to include their driving. But then once we do the blood draw and it comes back, it gives us the breakdown of what's in the system.
And so anybody who's taken prescription drugs legally is probably going to say, but I took it legally. And then it evolves into, but it's one of those drugs that you should not drive.
Right.
Correct.
And that can result, and that same charge could result in an OWI
Correct.
from the prescription
Good.
drug.
So we're in 2025, obviously. We're, almost 2.5 months into it. and we've already had 157 property damage crashes this year.
3 fatalities. So we're already, halfway into March, and we're already at half the amount that we were last year. 17 reported injuries. No, I'm sorry. 17 reported crashes with injuries, 24 injured people. And then we are already at 28 arrests for operating while intoxicated.
And that was from yesterday, and I know we made 2 arrests last night. So we're at 30 this year already. And we're not even a quarter of the way through the year yet.
So when's your next campaign as far as like, you're going to do like a 24 or 48 hour stretch?
We have, in April, we have a big one coming up, and I can't remember if it's just speeding or if it's our annual Click It to Live It campaign. But it's coming up the middle of April.
So now, does that also involve any buses being passed? Is that also in the same umbrella, or is that some different funding?
That's different funding. It's the same
grant.
Same grant,
just a different portion
funding
of the grant. So that is actually the
SAVE
stop arm violation enforcement, which is what we call the SAVE grant. And that is where local law enforcement follows school buses, and we watch for stop arm violations. So anything that's happening in, when school buses are stopping to pick up kids and they put the stop arm out, stop. Because if you don't, more than likely one of our guys are behind them, and you're going to get a ticket. And there's also, I believe, the bus drivers are very good about reporting that information to us. And then it also includes slowing down in school zones. So people fly through school zones, whether they're present or not. I mean, there's signs before every school zone that tells you, what the speed limit is, when it's enforced, what time limits you have for that. So just slow down in the mornings. Give yourself some extra time, especially if you're around schools.
Because it's pretty much the same time every day, morning and
Correct.
afternoon.
In the afternoon. Mm-hmm.
Wednesday's the only day that they do early release.
Early release.
Well, and Friday's late. Of course, that's in the city. That's a late, like an hour late for the city, but city police would have that one covered, wouldn't they?
We still, a couple of our guys follow Greensburg school buses around also. So
Okay.
we cover all 3 schools depending on where we live. I live down in South Decatur, so most of the time I'll follow South Decatur buses. We got a couple guys that live up north, they'll follow North Decatur buses. A couple guys live in Greensburg, they'll follow the Greensburg school buses. So just wherever they're closest to.
So you anticipate another campaign's coming up in April?
I think April, May, and August are our next 3 big ones. We do it every month. It's just not as big, as pronounced as.
Gotcha.
We don't do the whole news release and all that, but every month we have hours that we do.
So anytime we see like an abundance of traffic stops on the report, there's more than likely a campaign that's taken place, because if you see 50 traffic stops, that's probably a result of.
And we got some new guys on the department. Greensburg's got some new guys, and they're excited about out there doing it. So, and traffic stop lead to, other arrests. I think one of our guys just got cocaine here in the last couple days. Greensburg, I think, had some arrests last night for that. So
As a result of a traffic stop?
just a simple traffic stop. Could be a headlight out, could be speeding, and it leads to other things.
Even with the decreased amount of funding that we have this year, we still got enough funding to do 800 additional patrol hours for this fiscal year.
Okay.
So not all traffic, not all OPO activity is specific to a campaign. It's specific to a portion of our grant. But we have guys out there running OPO, weekly. So it's not always, specific to DUI or distracted driving or Click It to Live It. We do those, but we do, hundreds of patrol hours just on our own in their own time.
Okay. So now, with the grant that you're seeking for next year, you say you should know September-ish.
Yeah, we should know
how you'll come out.
We have to submit it, I believe, by June.
End of this month.
Oh, is it March?
Yeah.
We have to submit it by the end of March. It goes through a basically an application process through ICJI, which is the Indiana Criminal Justice Institute. And then from there, they pick and decide how they're going to fund, each county, city. I think the state police applies for part of it. And then they distribute the money, and then we will know by September how much we get. And then our fiscal year starts again in October for this. So then we get a whole new budget, and then we get, new goals for each grant.
And
So now, do you have to do a follow-up report to the ICJI?
every quarter we
Quarterly.
report.
Okay.
We have to report, and then the end of the fiscal year we have to the big reports due.
So what are they asking for in those reports?
Numbers, number of hours worked, who worked what, how many seatbelt tickets we wrote, how many speeding tickets. Just there's a report we have to do every quarter.
Rob puts a lot of time and effort into that because it's not just us on the Traffic Safety Partnership. It also includes the St. Paul Police Department and then the Decatur County Communications.
And New Point.
And New Point. Yeah, they're new this year.
Yep.
And the New Point Marshal Service. So New Point Police Department. So he takes basically all of the statistics that are turned in from each officer. Each officer has to turn in an activity sheet every time. It's monthly for the activity sheets? Quarterly. So for that quarter, they have to keep track of everything that they did, how many cars they pulled over, how many warnings they gave, how many citations they gave, how many
miles
they drove, how many, criminal investigations came out of it, how many criminal charges came out of it, how many OWIs. It's very time consuming. But he does a great job, and as small as our county is, just a year or two ago, we were in the top 5 in the state of Indiana for statistics for this because we had so many people running it. So just because we're still a small community doesn't mean that we're a lazy community. Like, we have very, very active policing in this community throughout all the departments in this community.
So now those 2024 statistics that you gave us, did those include the St. Paul office, but not New Point, right? Because they're new?
No, that has nothing to do with the grant itself, Sandy.
Okay.
That's our
That's our county.
That's
our county.
Countywide statistics.
So that has, yeah. So what you're talking about with New Point and St. Paul has to do with the grant you're saying?
right.
Correct.
Yeah, they're part of the partnership. Greensburg does their own church grant, so
Which is actually big that, we have a community that has so many different agencies involved in wanting to make the community safer, and wanting to get those officers out in the public and know that, we're trying to keep our roads safer and our driving and, our kids safer.
So has that resulted in more money coming to our county based on having some more agencies involved?
sometimes no, it's how active we are.
Okay.
On how big we are. They go through a review process, and they use the last year's numbers to determine what we're getting next year and how much funding they had. The big thing is they lost a lot of funding for 2025, so they had to cut everybody this year. And like I said, from 2024 to 25, we had a substantial cut.
So what you're applying for, will it be for a 2-year cycle or just the 26?
Just 26. I think we asked for 56,000 for, and most of that is for enforcement. We have a little bit for admin, where we pay an extra dispatcher to come in if we're doing a big push. Mm-hmm. For me to write or to report the grant, for us to do community outreach programs. We did a health fair. We've done
We just recently did the Opportunities Expo there at the high school.
How'd that go for you?
It was phenomenal. You know, every year we've been doing it, I think, since the first one that they had, and every year it gets a little bit better. There was a lot more businesses this year. There was a lot more interaction from the kids. I feel like the kids were a little more prepared this year than what they have been in the past. So I think, I know that a lot of work goes into putting that together and getting the sponsorships and getting the businesses to show up, but I think it's phenomenal for our community and for our kids to see that, locally there is all kinds of job opportunities for, various vocations. So I think that that's definitely a good thing to have. I love that they do it for juniors and seniors. You know, we, specifically because of that program, have implemented some internship programs for juniors
Okay.
and seniors. And we've actually had a lot of interest for, obviously you can't be on the road until you're 21, and that's set by a state statute. But you can be in the jail at 18. And we've actually had several people who have been shown interest in, you know, applying for a jail facility when they
And
graduate.
That's a good stepping stone to get on the road too. We're actually going through a process right now for a new hire, and
In the jail part or
on the road part.
on the road part?
So one of the candidates, or several candidates, were from our detention center, and one of our candidates said that helped him communicate with people, and they get to know people. Derek Fosnot, he started in our jail, and I can remember doing FTO with him at the sheriff's department, and him knowing people by face because of the time in the detention center.
Yeah, and I can think of a handful of others too. And I get.
Oh,
I
yeah,
just-
we actually have quite a few on
Uh-huh,
our force
that
that
started
either
that
started
way.
in the jail or had experience in dispatch. In my opinion, it kind of makes you a more well-rounded officer because you understand the law from different sides. You know,
So like Patrick Grau, Sergeant Grau, for us, he started in the dispatch center, and he said, yeah, I knew the names, but I couldn't put the face to the names, where the guys that come from the detention center know the face and the name.
our two most recent ILEA graduates, Josh Gaither and Morgan Smith, both of them were from our jail facility. So it's nice to be able to promote from within. It's nice that we can, you know, be that stepping stone. There's a lot of people that say that they start in the jail because they want the experience in corrections, and eventually, you know, they want to be on the road. And we have several young jailers, detention deputies, that I think that's kind of their ultimate goal. And, you know, we try to support them and train them and get them ready for that position as well as we can.
So how's it going with the mental health funding and moving ahead with that program, Mike Eggleston? Is that progressing?
It is
Moving fast.
We have
Yeah,
actually
moving fast.
You know, they're doing a phenomenal job with that program. We've got Mike Eggleston right now, who is the leader of it. You know, that was funded through the Lilly Endowment Grant through the Community Foundation. With their support, we are getting ready, I believe, to hire 2 positions for a CIT team. We do have a full-time licensed clinical social worker, Desiree Moore. She is phenomenal. And I can tell you, ever since we have activated the team, there's not a week that's gone by that we haven't used them for
Is
something.
that right?
It is.
Twice this week.
It is a service that this community has never really had. And I would actually, you know, hope that Mike would eventually get in here and talk to you kind of about that program and about the funding and what the program entails. But I can tell you that between Mike and Desiree, they spend a ton of hours dealing with the mental health crisis that we have and trying to get these people that are having these crises, you know, help. It's not always something that can be offered directly in our community, but it starts here. So we start here, and then they try to set them up with different options and support options, and they follow through with them, and they kind of stick with them through the whole thing in hopes that, you know, if we can get it solved then it's not going to be an issue later on.
Well, Desiree was in here last month, and then of course Mike was in here in the initial right after grant. So before it started evolving, when everything was brand new with getting things implemented that they had sought the funding for. So yeah, it sounds like things have.
We're getting ready to send all of our road deputies, and I believe
Our
all
whole
of
department
we'll be going
is.
through the week-long training for CIT also.
So where does that take place? Is that somewhere else?
I think the next one's here in Decatur County.
Yeah, so we're hosting one, and we will throughout the year because Mike is a instructor, and I believe Desiree is actually going to school
Okay.
to become an instructor as well. But there's also several counties. I think Jackson and Jennings counties also have programs. Johnson County has a CIT program. So a lot of those trainings are, you know, just a county or 2 away for us. So our goal is to have our entire department patrol, detention, and admin all go through this so that we're all trained to deal with those situations. Obviously, we deal with the initial and then, send it over to the CIT team for the follow-up and the follow-through. But I think it's going to be a great thing for this community. I think the program has already established its worth as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there's been some situations that I know I have handled in a capacity outside of the sheriff's department, and one of my other jobs that I've utilized the CIT team for, and it was phenomenal. I mean, we got great feedback. The people were very appreciative that somebody came and followed up with them, and I think it's just, there's obviously a mental health crisis in the world. It's not just our community, it's everywhere. And now that we're acknowledging it and we're doing things to help fix the issue, I think that that's going to show, a lot of difference in our future.
So would you say that things are turning out differently because of this program in place?
For the short period of time that they've been up and running, Mike's name's mentioned a lot with some individuals we deal with. So just this week, he was asked for by name twice that I know of. So
yeah, I definitely think it's making a difference.
Okay.
And I think we're just starting to see the difference that it can make. So.
Okay. So I'm going to ask about the weather. Anything from the Sheriff's Department way this morning as far as, I noticed on the Sheriff's Department report there was only one report of weather-related possibility problem or damage.
So we had some trees down in the county. We did have, I think, one crash. Somebody ran into one of the trees that was down, but no serious injuries. There was a semi out on the interstate that got blown over from a gust of wind, and then another semi that ended up in the median trying to avoid the one that got blown over. But as far as we know, no serious injuries. So I think we were lucky. That wind was pretty gnarly at times last night.
Okay. I know the tornado sirens went off, that they were activated. I believe I heard on the news they were sending somebody out to Bartholomew County to look at the damage there.
Yeah, I had heard that there was a possible tornado out there, but I don't know that it was ever confirmed by anybody. But even, sometimes it's not the tornado. Sometimes it's that straight line wind that can do just as much damage. So I did see online there was several counties adjacent to us and, 2 counties out that had a lot of damage. It seemed like the storm kind of started at the north side of Indiana and just worked its way across. So, but, that goes to show that also the community we live in, we had tons of people responding, after the storm went through, officers, doing community patrols, picking up highway signs, picking up construction signs, picking up trash cans. The fire departments came out and helped cut out trees and, try to get the roads open as much as we could. I think that there was a line down with one of the trees out in the county, and so, utility workers were out. Like, we were very blessed to live in the community that we live in.
Okay, so it sounds like, most importantly, no injuries. And then, of course, anybody who may have damage once it gets to be daylight would be calling you if they haven't already. So
Absolutely.
A lot of times you don't see that damage until you get to the daylight hours.
And
Okay.
A lot of them we don't know get reported. It goes right to the insurance companies. So,
Rob Goodfellow, Ashley Wilson, anything else this morning?
it's getting that time of year, so we need to start watching for the motorcycles too.
Yes, please. We've had, last year we had a couple of really serious motorcycle accidents that I think could have possibly been avoided had people been not distracted driving, and paying a little bit more attention and giving yourself a little bit more time when you're pulling out onto roads. So, motorcycles are everywhere. And sometimes they're not easy to hear until they're right up on you. So, especially in the summertime when it's nice, make sure that you're taking that extra time when you're pulling out onto especially major highways. Give yourself a little extra time, glance a couple extra times before you pull out.
And we don't have to worry about snow. Well, let's hope we don't have to worry about snow, but with the rain and all that, we still need to slow down in that weather. We get more accidents with during the rainstorms or after rainstorms from people hydroplaning or
Flooding.
Flooding.
Is very,
Then we
and
do-
it's very hard to see at dark. So if it's, dark out and it's been raining, slow down because there's very possibility that there's dips in the road and there's water standing in them. And if you've never hydroplaned before, it can slingshot your vehicle right into a ditch
It's
very
kind of a little bit of a
very
scary
easily.
scenario if you hydroplane. Yeah, it's not.
We get a lot of wrecks on the interstate when it rains. Just because the speed limit's posted as 65 or 70 doesn't mean you have to go that.
Other than that, put the phones down while you're driving.
All right, because that can be.
That's speed's number one. Distracted driving's number two when it comes to accidents.
All right, Rob Goodfella, Ashley Wilson, thanks for coming in. It's now 9 o'clock, WTRE.